I just want to go home.
Levitation is a community-made mod for Half Life Alyx, but expansion is probably a better term for it, because it's the sort of length and quality that you might imagine from a hypothetical Half Life Alyx Episode 1. Were it not for a few questionable character animations and first release bugs, you'd be hard pressed to distinguish a level of this from a level made by Valve themselves. The quality is that good, so I want to establish that before the rest of this video so that you know that the standards in Levitation are, rather aptly, very high. Levitation is community made, but is done by some of the most talented people on the scene. It's led by FM Pone, who you might know for such Counter-Strike maps as the remade Cache and Sub-Zero, and Museum and Crown and Santorini. Like, pretty much every map of his is good enough to have Valve feature it in their game. His attention to detail is bordering on obsessive, so I can't think of a better person to head the charge into Source 2 mapping and into the realm of VR. And indeed, some of the levels on display here are better than the ones from Half Life Alyx, for reasons I'll be explaining later. Corey Lado is another name you might know.
Source 2.
He's famous for high-quality Source 2 shitposts on YouTube and for his mastery of Half-Life's animation systems. All the characters in Levitation are voiced by people, some of whom sound rather like the characters they're meant to represent from Half Life Alyx.
Has, quite a bit of recoil. I'm going to stick to coding. You better take this.
Having played through Levitation, you could expect a very Half Life Alyx-y experience from it. It assumes you've already beaten that game, and I strongly suggest you do, and perhaps even to replay it before attempting Levitation, since this game is quite happy to toss waves of Combine at you early on, or to have you attack from various angles at the same time, or in various other ways that Valve wouldn't dare subject new VR players to. Having not played much VR recently, this was a bit overwhelming, even for me, and at points I found myself panicking during combat as one by one my weapons failed me because I'd forgotten to reload this or to yank on that. At one point I even panic paused the game. I won't spoil when this was in this video, but I will be posting another video talking you through the game, complete with spoilers. But for now, I'll summarise by saying, don't expect new kinds of enemies or anything like that. This is very much a load of new levels that borrow from Half Life Alyx's ideas and themes, but with a few novel twists on them. My favourite bits from Levitation were when it presented me with a large open environment with very few enemies, and I enjoyed just exploring them. It made me realise that Source 2 really can be quite beautiful, despite Half Life Alyx's best efforts to keep me in dark, claustrophobic sewers and in other depressing looking places. But exploring Levitation's more open and sunny looking environments reminded me of those bits in Half Life 2 where you discover a hidden cache off the road somewhere, and maybe you'd be rewarded with a puzzle or surprise encounter of some kind. Those were always my favourite bits from Half Life 2, and was something I felt Alyx was sorely lacking. I do feel that the original campaign for Alyx had its hands tied by having to cater for new VR players, but Levitation doesn't feel quite so bound to this, so expect a slightly tougher, slightly rougher experience. My least favourite bits of Levitation were probably when fighting the Combine. Those enemies are true bullet sponges, and it feels really cheap to catch them as they're reloading, to fire off 5 or 6 good shots at their faces, only to still get caught in their next barrage of bullets. I can't blame Levitation for this, as it's Valve who chooses this kind of stuff, but I suppose when you're facing end-of-game enemies with start-of-game weapons, it stings a bit more. I am slightly bitter that I collected resin throughout this game, saving up for the best weapon mods, and then when I revisited the save the following day, it had lost my progress and transported me to a level from Half Life Alyx instead, only I was hovering in the air at a random place. I hope this sort of bug is fixed, but after this happened, it did make me feel less invested in my playthrough, and I felt robbed of my weapon upgrade progress. Especially as restoring it from the start of the chapter had equipped me with different weapon mod upgrades that made the combat feel alien to me for a while. In general, the difficulty curve and puzzles feel a bit less intuitive than the main games did. Sometimes it can be very tough, only for the very next encounter to be a lot easier again. And even when you finally beat the puzzles, it doesn't always feel like you've solved them. I didn't always get that moment where it clicks. It's more like it ended up working for me, and with hindsight, I guess it's kind of obvious, but I can understand why other people could be stuck on those same puzzles for a lot longer through no fault of their own. Levitation is 3 to 4 hours long, which doesn't sound like much, and my playthrough landed almost bang on halfway through that at 3.5 hours. But a lot happens in that time, and it certainly felt a lot longer than that to me. Revisiting the first level again after finishing it felt very distant. Sort of like ending a holiday and looking back at pictures taken at the beginning and thinking, God, that was a long time ago. So just know that Levitation isn't long, but it feels like a good, well-lengthed expansion. Though I did often struggle to tell how far through it I was. At one point I thought I was getting towards the end, but I was only on chapter 3 of 5. There are a few moments in the game that feel like they're building up to a grand finale, only for the game to then just carry on to another segment. Which is great, because it's not like you really want it to end. But I'll be honest with you, a bug did stop me from finishing the game. Quite literally. I looked up a playthrough and it turns out I was very close to finishing it, so in my mind it feels a bit cheap to be reviewing something that I haven't technically finished, but I wasn't at fault, so there. It is very nice to have a good reason to jump back into Half-Life VR. The environments are masterfully designed and detailed with absolutely minimal numbers of graphical bugs. I noticed a more heavy emphasis on music than I did in Half-Life Alyx, which can feel more overwhelming in VR, especially when it's still playing heavy-hitting music, even when there are no enemies around. Sometimes when I was just trying to explore the environments, I didn't want a soundtrack accompanying my actions. And I did feel judged at points. Like if anyone was watching me playing, they'd be like, what is he doing? Plus it really does look like you should be able to take these toilet rolls off the holders. Aside from the puzzle segments, the toilet roll holder isn't one of them, Levitation feels more action-packed than Alyx did. You are facing more and tougher enemies, and earlier on than you did in Alyx. But unfortunately, it does feel kind of like you're facing end-of-game enemies with start-of-game equipment, which in Alyx's case means that you can expect frequent reloading, especially when pumping round after round after round into those bullet sponge combi. You're given plenty of ammunition, so you shouldn't run dry, but I'd like it if the game started with more resin so I could kit myself out with those autoloaders and laser sights sooner, as I feel those things really did help me to enjoy heavy combat more. At some point, the novelty of reloading and scavenging for equipment wears off, and it starts to become an unwelcome hindrance during heavy fighting segments. And Levitation's resin upgrades to remedy this came too late to help. But in the grand scale of things, these are all just little nitpicks, using the quality of Half-Life Alyx as the standard I'm benchmarking Levitation against. It is fascinating to see what the community is choosing to do with Half-Life Alyx's assets, and it's exciting for me to see how well their decisions have paid off. Levitation feels like a mod that shouldn't have come out so soon after the game it's for. It's too good for that. Half-Life Alyx was a taste of the future. Now Levitation does the same, but for community-made content around that game. And it's hard to imagine another equally high-quality release coming out anytime soon. Get Levitation while it's hot, but not too hot. My playthrough was marred by a few technical issues. Dying would sometimes disable the AI, which at best made the levels extremely easy, and at worst, it broke the game. Valve, please fix. I'm sure the guys from Levitation are working on a fix right now, and I just hope that it's fixed sooner rather than later. I know how frustrating it is to spend days making a video, only for the comment section to be filled with people pointing out the silliest little imperfection with it, so I can only imagine how infuriating it must be for the Levitation team, who have invested years of their lives into a free project for us to enjoy. It would be such a shame for it to be marred by a few release day issues, which, for all we know, aren't even their fault. So here's hoping it's all patched as soon as possible, as what will be left once it is an excellent piece of free new content for VR users. And we certainly need it. Question is, are you going to play this? VR's lack of adoption is infuriating for me. I see desktop gaming as mid-effort stuff. You still have to sit down to boot up your PC and to load the game. For most of us though, that isn't too much effort. But VR is high-effort gaming. For the real experience, you actually have to clear a space in your house, to set your VR device up, to charge your controllers, and to do physical work to play the game. It's made me realise that VR faces an uphill struggle to adopt new users. It's banking on its increased immersion and atmosphere to lure people in and to keep them playing. In my opinion, the payoff is certainly worth it if you invest the effort and experience the right kind of content, of which Levitation definitely is. While we're talking about effort in gaming, the other end of the spectrum is stuff like phones and Steam Decks, which are extremely accessible things that can bring you into the action at the press of a button. These are almost the opposite of what VR is. And I imagine that the future will gravitate towards these kinds of easier to use devices, since they have the lowest barrier to entry. But VR really isn't being helped by a complete absence of content worth using. Half-Life Alyx was out years ago, but it set such a high standard that other games are still struggling to catch up. Levitation does the logical thing by building upon what's already best, and by making more of it. So in a way, Levitation is probably in the top 5 experiences you can have in VR right now. And it's completely free. Please, give it a go once it gets its first bug patch. It deserves that. And so do you.